Hello, everybody. Today is December 15th, and it is the OLM working group and issue triage meeting. On our agenda today, Joe's going to show off a demo he has where an OLM catalog is built basically as a set of OCI image artifacts. So he can just discuss that more. Per is going to discuss the DEPI framework along with some generics. We were going to discuss an email I got from GitHub saying that we are currently one of their largest users actually for GitHub projects, and they wanted feedback. And I want to create an issue to track what you guys think we should recommend. I know I have some suggestions based on how we use it for this project, but I figured we'd give everyone a voice. And then finally, we were going to slightly modify this. We were going to actually start brainstorming for the second milestone. This is an artifact that I copied over from the previous week, so I'm going to update this after I hand the meeting to Joe. So, Joe, feel free to take over.
All right, let's hope this works. Let's see. All right, can you all see my terminal?
Yes, I can.
All right, so this is like totally me just prototyping and thinking of futuristic-y things, but because we're looking at OLM 1.0, I took this as an opportunity to maybe think outside the box a little bit on ways we could improve how we ship stuff. So Daniel Messer and I have been talking. So Daniel is a product manager at Red Hat, who happens to be both the operator framework product manager and the Quay product manager. And Quay is an image registry, if you're not familiar. So he has the unique perspective of thinking about operator framework in the context of image registries. So he and I have been talking. Evan Cordell, who was on this project a couple of years ago, is one of the technical leads, was also thinking about this. And finally, it seems like OCI artifacts are like far enough along-ish from an implementation perspective in image registries to like make this something that's potentially doable. So I threw something together over the last few days to prototype it out and see if it was going to work. And I thought I'd share what I've got. So I don't actually have a full catalog. I've got just a package, right? So we think about packages as having some high level information like a README and an icon and maybe some properties about a package. And then there's some channels in the package, right? So like there's a fast channel with just one entry in it, and channel might have some properties, and then the channel has some entries associated with it. This is essentially what's in the FBC, right? There's like an entries list that shows you what's in there. So if I look at that file just real quick, this is a more interesting one maybe. Right, like this just looks a lot like FBC, and there's some changes here that don't really matter for the purposes of this demo. And then there's some bundles, right? So there's 0.11.0 RuckPack bundle and a 0.10.0 RuckPack bundle. And I went and actually downloaded the RuckPack YAML manifest from the release, threw together some fake properties and constraints, but we do have, so these are real related images. So if I look at this, we see like, oh, okay, well, we need the operator framework RuckPack 0.11.0, and we need this QBar back proxy image. So like we've got the images listed. So essentially like what we can do here is we can, using OCI artifacts, we can basically like build this hierarchy of artifacts that are all linked together in this OCI supported way, such that you can start shipping around like this entire package as an atomic unit, right? So like you build all your container images and you push those, and then you build all your bundles, and those bundles directly reference the SHA digests of the container images that they need. And you push those bundles, and then you create some channels and populate those with some stuff, and you directly reference the bundles you just pushed and push that. And then you can create the package and, you know, create layers for the properties and the icon and the description, and then reference all the channels you created, right? So like at the end of the day, any change in this directed acyclic graph up to this root node ends up getting propagated all the way up to the top, because everything is content addressable, and the SHA is going to change somewhere if you make any changes, and that SHA propagate that change propagate through all the SHAs all the way up to the top. So it's got really nice benefits because of the immutability stuff. You also, the atomicness of it, right? Like you've got your entire package, it's right here. You can just refer to the one root level node, and like everything comes along for the ride if you want to deploy it somewhere, if you want to mirror it somewhere. So all sorts of stuff. So demo time. So I got a little binary here that lets you fetch an existing OCI reference and sort of print out some interesting stuff about it. It does this recursively. So you can fetch like a package and it'll start fetching all the stuff under the package, or you can fetch a channel and it'll just show you the channel and, you know, on down the tree. You can copy an artifact to a different repository somewhere on a different registry, or you can take like what I have here locally and push it up. So I've already done this, but just for the purposes of showing you guys, we can do it again. So I can say push. So I give it a directory name, and then I tell it a repo that I want to push it to. So I already pushed it here. Actually, here's another interesting thing. So let me push it somewhere else. Back to. And what did it not like? I have to push a package. Push the package. So it's just going to, like, in this case, it's like reading that directory tree. And it sees like, oh, okay, some of this stuff already exists. Let me see if I can make this a little wider. Some of this stuff already exists, so it's skipping. So it's detecting like, oh, the image registry already has these layers in it. I don't need to ship it. So it turns out this repo, like everything already existed. I didn't have to actually send any data. I didn't have to upload any blobs. If I do it to a third one, this is going to start saying like, okay, I'm pushing. I'm not going to let this run to completion because it's going to take too long. Anyway, I did this earlier today, and it's about like 1.2 gigs. Like when you push everything up, the total amount is 1.2 gigs. So the beauty is like, okay, if someone makes a change, right? Like let me go into let's go down to one of the bundles. And we'll just say this is no longer called a bundle deployment. It's called a bundle deployment, right? So we go back and we do this again. It's going to detect that we changed that, and you will see some lines here that say pushing instead, and then it'll tell us how many bytes got pushed. So there's a push right there. We changed the properties.yaml. And because we changed the properties, we changed the bundle, and because we changed the bundle, we changed the channel, and all the way up the tree, right? And so at the end of this, like, oh, okay, we pushed a total of 3K. So it's really nice because one way that FBCs and SQLite databases work right now is any change that happens in any package anywhere results in like a whole new database and a whole new layer in a container image. And anybody that wants to consume that has to download basically the entire catalog again. So if we can ship this stuff as OCI artifacts, then you only ever have to actually download the stuff that is actually changed, which is pretty cool. And then I don't want to take up too much time, but then on the other side of this, we can fetch this and see what it looks like. Good if I knew the usage of the own little tool I wrote. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do this one. So it just starts doing this recursively, right? So at the top, it resolves this to a SHA, which is this one, and it says like, okay, this is an image index. I see that it's got some annotations on here, which I added this artifact type. It has a bunch of manifests built in, like referenced by it. One of them is a markdown manifest, another is an icon, another is this properties. And we can basically have a big switch statement that knows about these media types and print out details about it, like basically unmarshal it. So we can see like, oh, okay, here's the contents of the properties. And then here is, let's see, this is now a channel, this one. And so this has its own manifests. So we have the channel entries, which I could have printed out. I just don't have the code that does that. More properties for the channel. And then now we get into a list of bundles. So now we see, okay, here's all the properties for the bundle. So there's a bundle deployment on 0. Where is it? 0.10.0. We look at 0.11.0. We see, where is it? Did I miss? Oh no, this is a different package. This is yeah, I didn't actually change this one. But anyway, you can see all the bundles, and then eventually you get down to the actual wait, that's weird. Oh yeah, and here's like the manifest lists, right? So like this is like one of these is the RuckPack image manifest list, and another one of these is that QBarback proxy one. And so if you look closely, you'll see, I don't know which is which, but 5D and 1.2. So where's the other manifest list? So this is the QBarback proxy one. This is nice because both 10 and 11 RuckPack versions depend on the same QBarback proxy. So it's not like we have to ship them twice. We just reference the same manifest list from both bundles. But obviously the RuckPack image is different, so we have a different shop for that one. So anyway, just a really quick demo. Hopefully that didn't take too long, but that's kind of what I've been toying around with and playing with and thinking about the last couple of days. Any questions? Otherwise we can move on. I don't want to take too much time, but happy to answer anything.
Well, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. Being able to slim the images down like this would be awesome.
All right, well, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, next up is Per, and he'll be discussing some of the work on DEPI framework, on the DEPI framework, along with his investigation into Go generics.
So yeah, maybe I'll start with our initial stab at the DEPI framework, and then I can try and describe the problem that I was trying to solve with generics. Not arguing that it should be the solution, but it's just something that I wanted to put to the community for consideration. So just let me see if I can share my screen. So I'll do a very quick run through the DEPI API. I just don't know whether you guys can see it, so just shout out, let me know. Anyone?
I can see your identifier IDE.
All right. Perfect. So this is just the basic units of the DEPI framework. The identifier just represents that unique identifier. The variable is the basic unit of input into the solver. It contains an identifier as well as the constraints that go along with that, which limit the number of solutions in which that identifier will be present. We can skip lit mapping for now. We have a constraint, which basically, as I just said, tries to constrain the solution space in which a particular variable appears. So Types of constraints that we have right now are things like mandatory, that means it should be in the solution, prohibited, it cannot be in the solution, that if it conflicts with another identifier, dependencies and things like that. And finally, we have an entity, and an entity just represents some domain specific bit of information which will eventually be converted into variables to be fed into the solver. So this is essentially an abstraction over our bundles. And one sec. And in terms of getting the input into the solver, we have two main structures. So an entity source, which is an interface which provides query methods for you to be able to retrieve entities from any kind of source that you implement. And we have a variable source, previously known as a constraint generator. I just thought variable source gelled better, and since it produces variables. So it's essentially a very simple interface, which given an entity source will produce a slice of variables. So this is basically the way the framework looks like right now. And this was just my first stab at what types of query operations you might want to do over an entity source. And they were largely informed by the types of variables and the types of constraints that go into those variables that we want to model. So the most basic is just to be able to get it by get a particular entity by its identifier. You could filter by particular predicates. So if an entity has a particular property, and if that property value is in a set or whatever you want it to be. We have a group by. This is one especially important for our uniqueness constraint, where we want to say you should only pick one bundle from a package, or you should only pick one bundle from a particular JVK, a GVK, and iterate. Now, the problem is this interface may not lend itself easily to any kind of backing store. One example would be you could just store all of your entities into an SQL database, and trying to create the queries from these types of method signatures just isn't particularly easy or simple. It becomes very cumbersome, like trying to square the circle. So now I wanted to show, just give me one sec. What I was playing around with. So this was, I basically tried to reduce everything to bare bones. So make very few assumptions about the types of behavior that things should implement. So I've changed the entity to just be something that provides an ID. So sorry, this could still be an identifier. I just read it as such for now. An entity source is then parameterized by a particular entity type. So, and it only really demands that you implement the simplest of methods here. So to get a particular entity by ID. It also serves up a particular source ID, but this is not very important right now. A variable source will produce a certain kind of variable and consume an entity source, which produces a particular type of entity. And still the same kind of signature, get variables, and the solver is not so important right now. So next, just let me stop sharing this window. I've been working on a OLM CLI to try and test out the DEPI framework. And I'll give a very quick rundown of it. So essentially, maybe I start here. I haven't paid too much attention to UX right now, but essentially you can add repositories. You can list packages that are in the database. You can list bundles. It's not just super friendly yet. It doesn't give you like a lot of information, but still, hopefully it illustrates what a real CLI application would do. And finally, you can also install particular operators, and this will actually generate a bundle deployment and apply it to the cluster. So in terms of the backing store, I'm just using a BoltDB database, which is just a very simple key value database. And the interface to into that store is basically this. So you can check if a repository exists. You can cache a repository, so that means like load it into the database, remove it. You can get a package, get a bundle, iterate over bundles, get a bundles for package, which should probably be called list bundles for package. You can list bundles for GVK and so on and so forth, right? So when it comes to the installation part, we want to do resolution over the bundles to make sure that we get all of those dependencies and so on. Oh, actually, before I go into that, the other unit that we should care about for this is the cached bundle. So this is a representation of data that gets put onto the database. Essentially, I'm just using the operator registry API bundle and wrapping around it a little bit of extra information, like the default channel name for the package of which that bundle is a part of, the repository where it came from, and a bundle ID, as well as pre-computing the package dependencies that are in that bundle. So first, starting off with the entity source, I've created this OLM entity source, which is just a wrapper around that package database. It operates over cached bundles, so that would be the entity that we care about in the DEPI parlance. We just implement the basic methods there and so on. And then finally, we go into the variable sources. So I basically have what I call the OLM variable source at the top level, which operates over cache bundles, returns an OLM variable, which is just an interface of the DEPI variable, and it provides a little bit of extra information like the entities that are stored in there as bundles. And in terms of the resolution, what it basically does is it takes in a whole bunch of required packages. The required package is also a variable source with a similar signature. And what it does is just calls the get bundles for package and restricts that set based on the repository where the package comes from, or the channel, or the version range as gets specified in these options. So it's essentially a variable where with a particular ID and which has a dependency on a certain set of bundles. So the first step is to collect all of the bundles, or all of the entities which come out of all of the required package variable sources. So this would give us the initial set of possible things that we want to install. Then the next step is to then go and step through the dependency chain for each of those. So we basically just see the queue with those entities that we collected at the first in the first step, and then we do a bit of breadth first search, looking at the package dependencies for that particular entity, getting the bundles for that package, looking at the required APIs that that entity might have, so the GBKs that it needs, and then going back to the database and asking it for all of the bundles that provide that GBK. And then once it finishes doing all of that, we can basically collect all of the bundles which will be in a solution to our problem, if that makes sense. So if a particular package that we require has a few dependencies, those dependencies are in the set. So if we select that, those will be selected too. And then finally, we take that set of bundles, so it should be a bundle set rather than a package set, and we pipe it into yet another variable source, which which essentially sets up those basically does that group by query that we were talking about before, makes sure things are sorted in a way that they will get picked by certain priority. So by channel, starting with default channel, and then by version decreasing. And we create those global uniqueness constraints. And then finally, this would give us our final set of variables, which would then be piped in to the solver. So here's our DEPI solver. It's also parameterized to take a particular entity source type and a particular variable source type. It picks up all those variables when you hit solve, and then it tells you which one of those were selected. And then I do a little bit of post-processing on the results just to do a topological sort, so to make sure that we're installing dependencies before the things that depend on them and things like that. So just to give a quick demo, which hopefully you can see. So we can do add repo. Let me see if I can find the catalog. So it's very hacky right now. All it's doing is basically bringing up the registry image and then using the registry client to talk to it. Takes a few seconds for the service to come up. So picked it up, added it, and then we can do let's package and just grab for catalog. So this was the operator hub catalog. And then we can try to install something like Zookeeper operator and hope for the best. So we can see it actually moves fairly quickly. So I've tried to measure the time taken in each of those steps that I've outlined. So it takes, what is that, like microseconds to go through. Of course, it will grow as the number of packages increases, but it's still pretty fast. And then finally, it applies bundle deployment. We can see there the Zookeeper operator is there, and if we get the namespace, there she is. And if we look, then the controller manager is up, and we can see that the CRDs are also installed in there. So hopefully that gives a flavor. Oh, someone had their hand up and I don't think I heard it. I'm sorry, Joe.
That was me. Actually, I had one question a lot earlier, but now I have a more interesting question, which is the by topology sorting.
Maybe I used the wrong term. So I'm just sorting by the leaves up. So if A depends on B, then B should be installed before A.
I wonder if that at all helps us with the problem that we have around telling someone, hey, this thing that you added to your constraints is the reason why your resolution's failing. Like, do we get maybe you don't get a topology out if you fail your resolution, but it seems like one of the things that we had talked about was like, man, it'd be really nice if we could kind of build that tree of like, here's how everything needs to look, and then it might be easier than to figure out where that tree has breakages or something. But I don't know if you've thought about that at all, but I feel like somehow I'm having some deja vu.
I didn't really think about it yet. So that was just a sort of really quick and dirty way of just hoping that things will work the way that they should because they're installed in the right order. But I think, yeah, if resolution fails, we wouldn't get anything out of it. But as long, like if we have the variables, we can definitely create this tree because we know where the roots are. So the things that we want to install. The only thing is it would be instead of, for each bundle in the package, perhaps for the query that was set up. So, where version range is, where the version is in a particular range, then each of those bundles would then get expanded with their dependencies, which might be fulfilled by several different bundles, and then those will be expanded and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And maybe what I'm thinking is like, if we can tie back to like, oh, this is the constraint that couldn't be met, then if we know which entity was the one that included that constraint, then maybe that helps us report the knowledge back up to an API user that says like, hey, this operator included a constraint that caused resolution to fail. And there might be 2 or 3 of those after a single thing that gets added. But yeah, I guess I'm wondering if we can figure out like, okay, you've got a set of 10 operator API objects. And if you took these 2 away, everything would work or something like that, right? Like, and then being able to say like, so these 2, therefore I'll go and update those 2's status to say like, hey, something's wrong here. But anyway, regardless of that, super cool demo. I like the generics. Very good use of them.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to sort of put out there to all of you guys. I've posted the links to the code on the Google Docs. You need to use my special branch of DEPI, which is just below the OLM CLI link. Yeah, if you guys could just have a look and have a think and see if it makes more sense for us to structure it in this way, such that the query interface is not set by the framework itself. Like there's a few advantages and disadvantages here. Like if we keep everything static like we originally have, then all of the different components are kind of reusable in any other DEPI, deployment or whatever you want. Whereas if we then go and say, oh no, you need this type of entity source that produces this type of entity, then that might reduce the amount of reuse. although we might be able to relax that a little bit by using duck typing or something like that. Like we could say, I take any kind of entity source which has this method that I need for the query that I need for this variable source, if that makes sense. And I consume any type of entity that has, that have these method signatures. That way, it might give us a little bit more flexibility, but I don't know. So I just wanted you guys, I just wanted to get more gray matter into the mix. Because I don't know if we're taking steps back and then, just focusing too much on the subject matter instead of having a generic framework, or whether this helps us enough and gives us enough degrees of freedom where we can sort of optimize things and so on. That was the original impetus. I tried against this particular database, and I made sure not to pick a database that would be too close to the types of queries that are defined there. I didn't even think about the interface. I was just thinking, what would be the easiest thing for me to build the application with, and Bolt was simple enough. So I just went with that. But then I found that when I go to implement the entity source interface, then things get super slow, several seconds slow and growing by several seconds per package. I'm sure I could do more optimization around that in terms of the query, but then the interface starts to influence the backing store and the structure of things too much. So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the question. How much should the interface dictate your choice of backing store, or how much should the backing store inform the interface, right? And that's it. That's all I got. Oh, and I have to give a shout out again to Joe, because it wouldn't have worked without the registry v1 provisioner. So.
Okay, awesome. Per, thank you for that demo. Everybody, please make sure to look at the changes that Per introduced. And do we have an official place where we want to actually provide that feedback, Per? Is there a good medium for that?
I guess just the upstream Slack is good enough. I'm always lurking around it, and it's good because then other people can participate as well, and or maybe be inspired by some comments and things like that.
Yeah, would it make sense to even create an issue on the DEFI project and just link these proposed changes, or do you think the Slack will be sufficient?
No, I mean I can do that too. I mean whatever's easier for everyone to sort of see it and find it.
Does anyone have a preference? Okay, we'll just do it in Slack then. Okay, so on the next item on the agenda, I submit it. Can everyone see the agenda? Can you guys see this? Hello?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So GitHub requested feedback on GitHub projects, and I basically just threw the GitHub message that they reached out to me via email. And they basically say that we're one of the GitHub project's most active users, which is kind of cool. And as one of the most active users, they want to know how we're using projects and how they can make it better for us. So I threw some simple suggestions together. The first one is just right now we have this OLM v1, and in order to know what this project is about, you have to click the project details. And it would be nice if we could at least optionally make this like a landing page up front. Instead of having to know that you have to click this project details button, which I don't think I've ever seen any other project use. And even with it, it's kind of hard to read because it's off to the side. So I'm not a huge fan of it. So that was something I thought we'd want to change. I also thought it would be nice if you could have a similar README at the top of each milestone so that we can kind of capture what it is we're doing. And then finally, I kind of mentioned how our project is, or I've I drafted a response where I basically call out that and I am welcome to people editing this because it was kind of difficult to write, but I just called out that our GitHub project really tracks a set of work items across a set of sub projects, which are independently, they had their own independent repos and their own milestones, and it didn't feel right to force those sub projects to create milestones that relate to this overarching project milestone that we define. And so it'd be great if it was be possible to assign an issue in like the DEPI project in our case to an issue in a separate project, or sorry, to a milestone that's defined in our operator controller milestone, or something similar. So I was just trying to think of what a better, because right now we obviously just apply kind of a complex labeling system, and then our milestones are really defined by a view in our GitHub project. So I thought it would be easier if we could just create a milestone in like the OLM, in the operator controller project, and then just link issues to that milestone in the in the DEPI or RuckPack projects. And I'm happy for you guys to make other suggestions. I just wanted to populate a few ideas that I had. And if you want to add other suggestions, you can just do so here. So I don't think we need to go over this now, but I would welcome any feedback, and I'll probably try and get this out early next week, maybe Monday. So it will give the community a little bit of time to submit their ideas. Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay, and the last thing I kind of wanted to announce was that we wanted to brainstorm on OLM v1 milestone 2 on the OLM v1 milestone 2 issue. So I just created an issue and I box that says suggested milestone stories. I don't know that anyone other than myself can edit this. I would just leave a comment if you have an idea for what the next story could be. We have 13 minutes. We could try and populate a few stories, or we can simply do this asynchronously and go over them in the next meeting. Does anyone have a preference?
Is the milestone 2 like fully fleshed out yet?
I don't think it's even defined what it's going to be. That's kind of why I wanted to give people the opportunity to say, okay, after we've hit a milestone, which allows us to install a operator, and uninstall it, what's the next thing we want to do? I think we've had some discussion around focusing on like the DEPI source adapter and the catalog sources and getting rid of the registry v1 client out of, we had talked as a shortcut we could put within the DEPI library, like hard coding the usage of the registry v1 client so that we can talk to catalog sources, and then eventually ripping that out. So that would probably be a good thing to do in milestone 2. It seems like Catherine also suggested that. So we could start there, and if people want to offer up other suggested milestone goals, they can speak to the ticket, or they can suggest them in real time now. So Catherine, do you have an idea what you'd want the story to be? Catherine, are you there? So Onyx is already working on kind of capturing what this could look like. Perhaps as a Depi user, I would like to be able to connect to Depi sources other than registry V1 catalogs. So Catherine, do you think this might capture at a very high level, like one of the suggested paths, which, you know, I wanted to write a user story like we did for the first milestone. And the user story is basically capturing that, hey, I'm a Depi user right now, everything's hard coded. I want to connect to something else, which inherently tells us that we have to remove the hard coded bits. Oh, yep, that looks good. So there's our first suggested one. And you know what we'll do is you guys can suggest stuff if you think you have a different idea. If there are other use cases that you want to see accomplished as a part of this one, I would just submit them on this issue, and then we'll refine it in our meeting next week, and we'll land on what we want milestone 2 to be, and then we can kick off the process of generating new issues for that milestone once we define what that milestone's goals are. Does anyone have any questions? You are a chatty bunch today. Okay. Or I can't hear anyone. So.
No, it's just a
We're
small
just
group.
really chatty.
Okay. So I haven't just talking over people blindly, which is good. Yeah, maybe it's good to add a goal at the end of this. Or at the top of this, right? And just kind of, since this is our first one that we're really generating as a group rather than it kind of being prescribed, is so one goal is just to promote the opportunity for the community to direct the work captured in milestone 1. Oh, sorry. To direct the work captured in milestone 2. The next thing we also want to do is basically come out with, what's the phrase? Define a focused set of stories of user stories that offer some E2E experience based on the OLM V1 MVP doc, which I'll link later. And Catherine mentioned that there are likely going to be some follow-ups from milestone 1 that we're going to need to put into this. I think that's totally true. I think it's something we'll probably be able to add more of as we close out milestone 1. But I still think it's good to say, like, we're probably moving into the space of focusing on the catalog sources at this point and the work that needs to be done there, so Depi can integrate with different types of Depi sources. And so just getting some feedback from the community now will be good. And then some leftover work that emerges, or any follow-up work that emerges from milestone 1, could definitely influence the stories that we create. But we'll get there when we get there. Okay, is everybody okay with this being the goals of the ticket?
That seems good to me so far.
Cool. Maybe it's also good. This is eventually going to be the actual milestone goals. Okay, I guess we'll add a section underneath this later, or just remove the suggested milestone stories later. So this is fine for now, because this will eventually transform into the actual OLM V1 milestone 2 ticket. Okay, well, on that note, I think that's everything that we've had on the agenda. So please be sure to look at the OLM V1 project, think about what else you'd want to get out of this project view and how it could be improved and how we could communicate like the state of the project better.
I do have a question, however.
Yep.
On 2 of these tickets.
Yep.
Number 62 and number 69. Are they? It's 69 to the top of the to-do.
Yes,
Are these the same thing?
good question. So I believe this points to, so there are 5 stories, and I think it's like 62 through 65. That's less than 5. That's 4 stories. The next one is 602. But these are more of a meta issue, and I think you'll see 69 included as a subtask in it. So these are more like top level
Okay,
experiences
Gotcha.
we're trying to hit in think of it as an epic, and then this is the
Yep.
story, right?
Yep. I understand.
Cool.
I just like, wait a second, those two look so similar, but okay.
Yeah, they're totally similar. And then I think Catherine actually just made a suggestion in chat. So maybe another good goal is enable a generic way to hook up DEPI sources. Yeah, we can just copy paste that for now, right? It's a movement target. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Cool. So we at least have started defining what the milestone 2 is going to be. I'm going to let us out 4 minutes early because we usually run over, and this is a rare opportunity not to. So please, if you have suggestions on what you want to see happen in milestone 2, leave comments on this issue. It's in the operator framework enhancements repository. I've linked it in the agenda, so you can just click that and jump to it. And then if you have any ideas on how the GitHub projects could be more useful for our purposes, or even your own purposes if you use it, let me know, and I will communicate those to GitHub. And I'll let you know what I hear back from them. Cool. Thank you for attending. I will catch you all later.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.